Gary, is stress real or is it a pattern that a learned way of responding that keeps showing up until we do something differently about it?
To me, there's always going to be stress, always. And there's not such a good thing as good and bad stress. It's just stress. And it's how you react to it that makes it good or bad. But the world is always changing and we're always changing. So that's going to make stress. So I read this book where it talked about, hey, we're looking for perfection. And I'm like, no, there's no such thing as
Yeah.
perfection.
Yeah, so I love that. And I would also add to it that there are lots of negative
Negative emotions. And
emotions.
so what I
And
see is, yes, there's definitely negative emotions. That's fear and guilt and shame. Those are negative emotions. Anger is kind of an in-between emotion. Like some people think of it as negative, other people think of it as positive.
And then, because when we are not able to understand those emotions, when we don't take the messages that these emotions carry, then we can easily blame the emotions and we don't understand them and just try to get rid of them. But then, what I have learned through my spiritual practices is that the more we try to get rid of them, the more they are there. So it's always better to embrace them, to understand that okay, it's a part of my life. It's there
Yeah.
with some positive intent and is there to help me out in some way.
Well, this is true. So here's one of the things that I found. So I was just talking to someone the other day and we were talking about evolutionary biology, right? And so one of the things that came out of my work was, what are emotions and where'd they come from and what are they supposed to do?
You practiced medicine for about 4 decades.
Yeah.
If you had to describe your journey, and not your professional life, but then your personal journey, what would you say? Gary, is stress real or is it a pattern that a learned way of responding that keeps showing up until we do something differently about it?
Okay. So lots of people ask me, how do you define stress? Because obviously that's critical since we're talking about having less of it. So to me, there's always going to be stress, always. And there's not such a good thing as good and bad stress. It's just stress. And it's how you react to it that makes it good or bad. But the world is always changing and we're always changing. So that's going to make stress. So I read this book where it talked about, hey, we're looking for perfection. And I'm like, no, there's no such thing as
Yeah.
perfection, because as soon as you say you're perfect, the world changes or you change and you're not perfect anymore. So I don't think being perfect is the goal. And I don't think having no stress is the goal, because no stress means you're not changing and the world's not changing, which is impossible. So we're always going to have that stress of adjusting to what the world is around us. And the question then is, well, how do we manage the stress in a more effective way so that we don't feel bad, that we feel good about what we're doing?
Yeah, we'll talk about it as we go along. But first of all, I would like to understand this point that this is a learned behavior. What I feel is this that we learn it in our childhood, but we don't know that it's stress. This is a kind of feeling, a strange feeling in our body that we don't feel good about or we don't enjoy. For example, when I used to see my parents fighting or struggling with something, I used to feel that stress in my body. Or whenever I felt that I need to be, perfect, to be accepted or to be loved, I used to feel that stress in my body. But as a child, I did not know that stress. So it starts from the
Yes.
childhood, I guess.
Well, so what you're describing is that we have all these reactions, and sometimes we're aware of it, sometimes we're not. So when they talk about mindfulness, part of what mindfulness is trying to make you aware of all the things you have. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I was doing, my wife and I were doing this diet called Optavia, and it's been great. But there's times when you get hungry, right? And you're like, wait, when you say hungry, people go, oh, yeah, I know what hungry means. You can use it in a sense. But then when you go, wait, what is it? And you're like, huh. So then as you would feel hunger, what you would call hunger, then you would go, oh, that's my stomach rumbling around. And there's some discomfort and blah, blah, blah. As you understood what the physiological sign was, then you're
Yeah.
like, oh, that's hunger. Where people get into trouble is they go, hey, they feel anxious and they interpret that as they're hungry. So they go and get something to eat,
Yeah.
but then they still feel anxious. So then they get something more to eat. So then they get something more to eat. Then they look in the mirror and they don't like what they see. So that makes them anxious, which then makes them more. So when you don't understand what your own body's trying to tell you, then you can start treating it in the wrong way and not, saying, hey, I'm hungry and you putting food in. But it's when you're saying you're anxious, then you want to get rid of some of that fear, different things. And so the more you understand about your body and how it's reacting, then the more you can deal with it effectively. And so what you're talking about as kids, I mean, that's one of the things that you do as a human is when you're going from kid to adult is you're learning what are my signs and symptoms? What does that mean? What is, when my parents are fighting, what does that make me feel? And
Yeah.
that's where, like, when you understand what it is, so it's some combination of worry and fear and anger and like curiosity, like what's going on here? I don't even know what's happening. So there's all these feeling like a victim or whatever. So there's all these feelings that are going on, and the more you can identify them, then the more effective you can be at treating.
Yeah, so I love that. And I would also add to it that there are lots of negative emotions. And when we, individually, they make a kind of feeling that we call stress. Is that true?
So yes, I agree with you with the negative emotions. So we do not like feeling fear. We do not feeling the guilty. We don't like shame, things like that. Anger, interesting, to me, is kind of an in-between thing. So some people think anger is a bad thing, a negative thing. So what I see is yes, there's definitely negative emotions. That's fear and guilt and shame. Those are negative emotions.
Yeah.
Anger is kind of an in-between emotion. Like some people think of it as negative, other people think of it as positive. The consequences can be negative, like you punch somebody out or you shoot them and you kill them. That's obviously negative. But the emotion itself is more of a powerful emotion. People feel powerful and they can take on the world because they're going to take on some person. And a lot of times, what I've seen, like if you're at a bar and there's some little guy and he sees a bouncer who's like 100 pounds heavier than him, and he's like, I'm going to take you on. And you're like, are you nuts? What's the matter with you? Right. So the anger feeling makes you feel very powerful. And so what I see a lot of times is people actually are afraid, but they don't like feeling afraid because it's negative. So they turn it into anger.
Yeah.
So what I've seen is a lot of times when things are changing in the world and people don't necessarily like change, instead of saying, I'm really afraid of what's going to happen, they go, oh, I'm really angry about what's happening. I got to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah. And then because when we are not able to understand those emotions, when we don't take the messages that these emotions carry, then we can easily blame the emotions and we don't understand them and just try to get rid of them. But then what I have learned through my spiritual practices is that the more we try to get rid of them, the more they are there. So it's always better to embrace them, to understand that okay, it's a part of my life. It's there
Yeah.
with some positive intent and is there to help me out in some way.
Well, this is true. So here's one of the things that I found. So I was just talking to someone the other day and we were talking about evolutionary biology, right? And so one of the things that came out of my work was what are emotions and where'd they come from and what are they supposed to do? So to me, what emotions were before humans could think,
Yeah.
like we were just an animal like everybody else. And then our brain evolved and we started to be able to think. But before that, emotions were what kept us alive. So I don't have to go, huh? I heard some noise in the woods. Is that a lion, a tiger? Who cares? My fear reaction went off and I'm
Yeah.
running away, right? Or I'm
It's the
hiding.
same.
Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to like take that 10 seconds to figure out what it was. I just want to run away and get away from it. So emotions were set up to be rapid, like really fast, like
Yeah.
milliseconds. And they were meant to be a push button. So you just push the button and the reaction goes off. And they were pre-programmed. So like I don't have to go, huh? Let me learn how to be afraid. Let me learn how to be angry.
Yes.
No, what I do learn is what to be afraid of,
Yeah.
what to be angry about. And that's where we get into trouble nowadays because, like, say, anger. So, anger was designed that if somebody's attacking you, you fight back. Your whole body gets into a mode of where you're getting ready to fight. The blood to your skin goes down. So if you get cut, you don't bleed to death. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, your teeth react. All these things happen like instantaneously, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was meant for somebody that was trying to kill you or something that was trying to kill you. Nowadays, we get angry because somebody cut me off in traffic or somebody called me a bad name. And you're like, why? Why are you getting so angry? Like,
Yeah.
nobody's trying to kill you. So if somebody's not trying to kill you, then you don't need to have anger. And the second half of that is you might not be able to stop the reaction from happening. Like you might not be able to go, oh, I'm not going to feel angry in this situation.
Yeah.
But what you can do is there's a window between where the reaction goes off and where you actually act on it. And in that window, you can go, oh, I'm really angry, but I'm not going to punch you in the face. or
Yeah.
I'm really angry, but I got this gun in my hand, but I'm not going to pull the trigger. That window is that's where we get control of our emotions, where we go, I can't necessarily stop the anger from happening, but I can stop what I do with it.
Yes, exactly. How we respond to the emotions that we catch. Uh, Gary, I want to ask you this question now. This is about your life. Like you practiced medicine for about 4 decades. Uh,
Yeah.
so, if you had to describe your journey, and not your professional life, but then your personal journey, what would you say?
Somebody asked me like, why did I decide to be a doctor? And
Hmm.
I decided when I was in eighth grade, which I don't know why. I asked my mom like, hey, why did I do you remember what I said about wanting to be a doctor? She's like, no. But I will say this, that whatever Regan decided, that it was the best thing that I ever did. So being a doctor has been a great journey. It has allowed me to be friends with my patients, and it has allowed me the honor of helping them guide them through their lives so that they can live a better life. I gave up the idea that I was going to fix people. Like that just doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
But what I can do is make their lives better. And so when I was a doctor, what I was doing was giving them a prescription or giving them advice or doing a test to figure out what was wrong with them or send them to the right consultant. But my whole job was to make their lives better. And by making their lives better, then they would show me appreciation, go, Doc, that was thank you so much. You saved my life. And that would make me feel good, right? And
Yeah.
then what I realized was I stopped being a doctor a couple years ago and I retired, but I didn't stop trying to heal people. So my new mission now is, even though I don't have a prescription and a stethoscope, I got a book and a podcast and right? So my mission is still to help people feel better. It's just in a different venue now. So I mean, for me, this has been 40 years of greatness.
Yeah, great. And why is it so important for you? Because I see that it's the purpose of life. Because the purpose of life for you, maybe it's just you to help people with stress. So why is it so important for you? Like what I believe that there is some personal connection to something that we carry a message
Yeah.
as. So what is it for
So
you?
there's a philosophy that comes out of the work that I do. There's an underlying philosophy to the world that's like in the United States anyway, and
Mm-hmm.
it's more like a Darwin theory where it's like dog eat dog world and just hierarchical and the best person wins and the worst person. And like in my philosophy that comes out of this work is like, no, that's not the way we all win. We can have they call it a win-win situation, right? So it turns out humans tend to be very selfish, like we're number one and we want what's best for us.
Yeah.
But in our effort to be selfish and want the best for us, it turns out cooperation is the best way for that to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I get it.
when you have a deal that you're trying to work out, when both people win, then everybody wins. It's
Yeah.
like one of the things I see are some people are negotiating where like I win and you lose. Well, okay, that might work once, but when you have to interact with that person again, that doesn't go so well. And both of you end up, maybe you'll get better for a little while and that guy gets worse for a little while, but ultimately things don't go well for somebody who's trying to always win and you lose.
Mhm.
So when everybody's trying to win in a situation where they're both winning, then everybody wins. And
Yeah.
so what I'm trying to do then is if I'm getting everybody in that happy place and everybody's having less stress, then they're way more likely to want to get into situations where they can negotiate out a win-win situation. And
Yeah.
I find that there's actually a destination that comes out of my work, and I label it the unisphere. And when you have a certain percentage of the people in the world cooperating, we'll end up in that place called the unisphere. Other people might call it heaven, might make me
Yeah.
nirvana, whatever you want to call it, right? I call it the unisphere. And it's when everybody's cooperating for the good of mankind and
Yeah.
for the good of the earth, really, we're going to end up in some place. Think about all the resources that we spend defending ourselves. And there's like plenty of food in the world, but the distribution isn't so good. It's
Hmm.
like if we took all the resources that we spend protecting ourselves and use it to help each other, what? There would be no hunger. There would be nobody not having water. There'd be like all these things would be so much better. We just have to cooperate to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The world is going to be a happy place to live in
Well,
for everybody.
as part of my book is,
Yeah.
how do you get to your happy place? So part of that is defining what the happy place is. And
Yeah.
when you realize what makes up the rooms of a happy place, it's not that hard to get to. You just have to be aware of what's going on around you.
Yes, exactly. Just change the way we look at it. Gary, you have helped thousands of people. find relief and happiness. But when you look back at your own life, what was the most stressful chapter of your own life that you lived through, and what did you learn about yourself in that time?
When I first started in practice, I worked in a rural area where there weren't very many consultants. And so I started seeing patients that I'm a primary care doctor. So I was seeing all these patients that were in chronic pain that were miserable. And there was nobody to help take care of them. So I started learning how to take care of chronic pain patients, patients that had chronic pain. So I was using different medications, different modalities. The board of physicians in my state, there was a mandate that said, hey, you guys aren't doing enough. Your patients are in a lot of pain. You're not treating them hard, strict. You're not giving them enough medication to fix their pain. So do more or you're going to get in trouble. So I took that to heart. So I started treating people more aggressively, but with the idea that, hey, I'm going to give you a certain amount of pain medicine, but I'm going to try to minimize the side effects. Okay. But then everything changed. Like there was a 180-degree. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, you guys that are treating patients in chronic pain, you're bad. You're causing addictions. You're this, you're doing that, blah, which is not true, but that's what they said. And I just happened to be in that category. So then all of a sudden I'm getting in trouble for doing the same thing that 10 years ago I was being plotted for and told to do. So now I'm in front of my board going, they're like, we might have to take your license away. We're going to have to suspend you. We're going to have to make you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, blah, blah, blah. So I spent the next 10, 15 years literally worried that my license was going to get taken away or I was going to get fined. Like literally, anyway, there was a whole lot of bad stuff going on right then. But in the meantime, I still had to make money, provide for my family, help my patients get through their lives, right? So I'm trying to be a doctor and at the same time treated badly by my board going, hey, you're a bad doctor. And I'm like, wait, what? And it didn't, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, but during that time, it was a long time because it was like 15, 20 years. And it was really stressful because you're always worried about losing your license. But what happened, interestingly, right? As bad as that was, this is where, and one of the other books I was involved in is called Mindset Matters. It makes a difference how you view the situation. So I saw this. Yes, that they weren't being nice to me and they weren't being very fair, but I got to make some decisions to make this work. And so I started making changes in my life. Like I said to my wife, you know what? The board might do something stupid and actually take my license away, which would be ridiculous, but they might do it anyway. So I got to start finding something else to do in case that happens. So I started learning how to do real estate. We took a course and we started doing some real estate stuff. I finished right. I was like, I got to finish writing my book. Finish writing my book. So now, when I've retired, a lot of doctors, a lot of people, when they retire, their identity gets messed up because they're like, I've always been a basketball player, I've always been a doctor, I've always been a lawyer, I've always been a podcast host or whatever, right? So now all of a sudden you're not, and you're like, who am I now, right? So for me, that was easy because I'm like, oh, well, I'm still a doctor, but I'm also an author, and I'm also a real estate investor, and I'm also, right? So I had all these things lined up so that if I needed to. So the word I use is I had reserve. I had other things to go to. I had plans that I had made. I started doing things. I said to my wife, we need to make as much money as we can because we never know what's going to happen. So somebody said to me, hey, I got this nursing home I want you to go to, but it's an hour away. You're like, whoa, that's really far away. But you know what? When your mantra is you got to make as much money because you don't know when you're not going to be able to, then you go, yeah, fine, I'll do it. Well, then that opened up this whole. So then I was able, when I retired, like I had enough money to retire and it was like, yay. So like, even though what happened to me with the board was bad, it made me do things that actually turned out for the best. So there, in some ways, I go back to my board and go, thanks for being so mean to me. because you were so mean, all these other good things happened.
Yeah, yeah. So, as you're talking about your own life journey, and I would just like to add here that people stress a lot about money. They stress a lot over money, and this is very common in the corporate world. Like I work
Absolutely.
with CEOs and founders of IT businesses, and I see that people are actually this is something that is more of like killing them over other things. Of course, relationships is also there in the like the next thing, but money is the primary thing where people stress over a lot. And I was that person too,
Sure.
who used to worry about money until I managed things on my own and stuff, like things changed for me. So how do we do that? Like how do we entangle that stress from money, like how do we
Well, so
come out
first off,
of
you have to
that?
understand what money is, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
money is our way to transfer. entities, right? So like if I have the advice of a doctor and you want it, I can't, you could say, give me six turkeys and I'll give you my advice, right?
Yeah.
That's awkward. So we made up this thing called money. So you can say, hey, here's $10 and I'll give you my advice, right? So it's a way to exchange things back and forth that's convenient. What's happened is money then becomes your safety net because money now buys you food, it buys you water, it buys you shelter, it buys you clothes, right? So the reason money is so important is because it affords us all these things that we can get that we might not be able to get if we didn't have money.
Mm.
So the second thing is then there's only so much money in the world. And what you see is money tends to gravitate. So people that have money, so here it's like, so as a doctor, I had more money than some of the other people in the world, right? So I was able to then hire a consultant who could say, well, here's how you can save money on your taxes. So I was able to save money on my taxes that other people didn't have access to that information. So
Mm.
even though so then that made me have more money, which then makes, right? So then you can invest in something. Well, that gives you more. So what happens is as you gain money, it gets more and more and more. Where I think people get into trouble is where they start wanting just to get money. Like I read stories in the 1900s where these guys where they wanted to be the richest guy in the world and they were having like a fight over who was going to be the richest guy in the world. Who cares? Like after a certain amount of money, who cares? Like what? Like
Yeah.
that's a dumb goal, right? Those two guys that were fighting when they got older, then they started fighting about who could give the most money away. That's a better goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I said, Nancy, is like the problem that we have with money is you never know when you have enough because things can change. 2 months ago, the stock market dropped like 20, 30%, right? Now it's 3 months later, it's back up to where it was before. And you're like, wait, what? So there's this insecurity that goes along with even if you have a lot of money, like you see these stories where like somebody, won $1 million in the lottery and now they're broke, worse than broke, because now they owe a whole bunch of money, right? So that's the problem with money is that there's no security to it. So one of the answers is, and this is the word I use, is reserve. So I talk to way too many people that I go, how much money do you have in the bank? And they go, like, well, none. And like, wait, what? So like every paycheck is already spent before it even gets there because that's
Yes.
the way they live their life. So then they go, well, I don't make enough money to save. And I'm like, well, wait. And then I go, don't you vape? And like, well, yeah. And I go, well, how much do you spend on vaping? And they're like, well, I don't want to tell you. And you're
Mm.
like, yeah. So there's all this money that we're spending that we don't really need to. So I'll use air conditioning as an example, right? Like we all have air conditioners now. Great, right? They cost a lot of money, right? That's $200-300 a month. 100 years ago, there was no such thing as an air conditioner. People survived amazingly, right? So if you don't have 6 months of your bills in reserve, then you should be doing everything in your power to either make more money so that you can save or spend less so that you can have this pot. So I know my wife and I now, we have a pretty big pot, right? And you still work because you're still insecure. But we go, oh, hey, we got a flat tire. Well, no big deal. I'll just take some money out of my savings. We'll fix the flat tire. And then when the next money comes in, we'll put it back in, right? So by not wasting your money on stuff that isn't helping you, and by putting a reserve in place, then even in your business, same thing. Like if you have 6 months of bills that you have to come up with every month, there's 6 months in a bank somewhere just gaining interest.
Mm.
How much better will you sleep if you have that? But what people tend to do is they spend what they make. So there's a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was
Yeah.
written 20,
Very
30 years
famous
ago.
book. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what he talks about is people get a raise, and instead of taking that money that with the raise, because they've been living, right? So instead of taking that raise and putting it in the bank, they just spend more. And you're
Mm.
like, no, don't do that. And he talks about doodads, which is I see this all the time. I'm down at my stepson's house the other day, and they're like, a delivery came. I'm like, what's that? He goes, oh, yeah, you shouldn't have seen that. I'm like, wait, what is that? Right? He goes, oh, that's something called Stitch Fix or something like that. And it's some online clothier that picks out clothes for you and then sends it to you once a month. And then if you don't want them, you send them back. But then, of course, he doesn't send them back. So now you're spending a couple $100 on clothes that you don't even need. And you're
Yeah.
like, what are you doing? You're not even paying your bills. What the hell's, what's the matter with you, right?
So it's all
So,
self-sabotage, I guess. It's just that how
yes.
we see money, because if we have struggled with money in our childhood, we have seen that. And then we have developed that kind of scarcity mindset where no matter how big money we have, like how much money we have, it's always less. We always feel that lack,
Well, it's insecure. You don't know whether it's going to stay there or not. Like,
Yeah,
who knows what's going to happen? You
yeah,
might get some medical illness, and all of a sudden you've got $100,000 bill, and it's like, yeah. So that is the problem, that there's an insecurity. So reserve helps reduce some of that insecurity. It
yeah,
doesn't make it go away, but it
yeah.
definitely, if you have no money in the bank and a bill comes up, now you're in trouble. If you have 6 months of income in your bank account, well, now you at least feel better.
Yes, yes. You feel better, and then if you have a plan to make more money, it's like you pick up a number. For example, when I teach my programs, I say that pick up a number and then work towards that, rather than
Yeah.
just I want to make more money. Like be very clear about your vision and then start making that happen. So this is interesting, but I see that most of the times it's more of scarcity mindset that people see the way they see at money. That's the problem.
Well, so one of the things we talked to my stepson about, and this is my wife was saying this too, is like you have to differentiate needs and wants.
Yeah.
So you might have wanted that. There was a pair of the example that came up was there was one of he sent back the shoes and the shirt, but there was a pair of sweatpants that he really liked. And he goes, "Yeah, I think I'm going to keep them." And she goes, "Do you need those sweatpants?" He's like, well, no, but I want them, right? And you're like, okay, well, and those sweatpants, how much did they cost? Well, it turned out they were like $60. And you're like, $60 for a pair of sweatpants that you don't need, that you're not going to probably even have a place to wear them?
Yeah.
Really? And so when you start separating out what's a need, like I need some food so I can eat tomorrow, versus, hey, there's some sweatpants that I really like. Yeah, no. And so when you start, so like that's what I'm saying with air conditioning. Like a lot of people, I need air conditioner, I can't survive. No, people survived a long time without air conditioning. It's like you can do with less of it. Maybe you don't have to make, instead of it being like I go to Florida sometimes for vacation. And Floridians, I don't know why, but they keep their thermostats at like 68 degrees in the summer. So I'm freezing. I'm like, what are you doing? Like my house is like 78 or 80. So guess what? My bills are a lot less.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yes, that makes total sense. One more thing, like I would like to add here is that people stress over relationships also, like it's family or romantic relationships, like partnerships and business, colleagues, bosses. This is also something that takes a lot of space in the stress world. Uh, so, what advice would you like to give to people who are facing or experiencing stress in their relationships?
Yeah. So this is one of the things I say to people. Like humans have made our environment really safe, right? Like I don't worry about a bear attacking me. I don't worry about a lion sneaking out of the grass and killing me, right? Humans are the most dangerous thing in my environment by
Yeah.
far. They can break my heart. They can steal my money. They can take my job. They can like they're bad, right? It's like bad. But the problem is that as humans, we are set up in our brain, ecologically, we're set up to want to be attached. We want to be connected. We like being with people. We're set up to be with people. We're set up to be a cooperative, a communal organism. So what a weird position that puts us in. We want to be connected, but you're the most dangerous thing that's in my environment by
Yeah.
far. So it puts us in this big dilemma. How do we do that? I think that one of the reasons social media has become so popular is because it allows you to have a relationship, but with some distance. So you have a little bit more control. So you can go, you know what? I don't like what you're saying. You're deleted, right? So it gives you some of that connection, but without some of the side effects, without some of the
Yeah.
danger. But it's not as good a connection. So you and I are meeting on Zoom, and that's great. But if we were meeting in person, it'd be a whole different layer of interaction that we'd be
Yeah.
having that we can't have here.
Exactly.
But that's okay, right? So the second thing is I see pets, right? I don't know about where you're at, but where we are, like pets have become like this billions of dollar business. And I think what happens is pets have become that, hey, I'm going to have an interaction with another organism. It just isn't going to be a human. And
Yeah.
like my dog is going to like me no matter what. And he's not going to steal my money and he's
Yeah.
not going to, right? So the worst he's going to do is chew up my furniture or something, and I can replace that. So people feel safer in a relationship with their pet than they do with a human.
Yeah.
So that's part of what we've done to try and do that. But when I see human to human interaction, I think one of the biggest problems that we get into is miscommunication. Well, couple things, three things. Miscommunication is one. So I might be saying A and you're hearing B. And then you say C and I'm hearing D. So we're So
Not on the
I,
same
as an
page.
example, right, there was a couple that I was in this couples therapy treatment, and there was this thing called mirroring. So the lady goes, "I don't like that your job pays you intermittently," and the guy goes, "What? You don't like my job? I knew you didn't like it. You're, a pain in the ass." Blah blah blah. And she goes, "No, no, no, I don't like that. Is what doesn't matter? You're not listening to me." And all of a sudden, they're like fighting like cats and dogs in front of like 50 people, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
the moderator's like, "Whoa, whoa, take a step back." And he said to the guy, wait, listen to what she said before you respond, because your job is to repeat what she said. So then she repeats and says, look, you're a real estate agent and you make good money, but it's intermittent. So some months you make a lot of money and some months you don't make any money. So when I'm trying to pay bills, I don't know how to do it because I don't know when, if money's coming or not. And then he goes, and he heard her and he goes, well, I don't like that either. And you're like, wait, these guys had gotten a huge argument
Yeah,
on something they agreed with, right? Just because they had miscommunicated.
correct.
Second thing is that people don't, like you mentioned being young, right? When you were a little girl, there's a whole bunch of things that happen to us that when we're young that we don't even remember happened to us. Like if I said to you, what happened to you when you were old? You're like, I don't know. I don't remember when I was one, right? But for 5 years, there's stuff happening to you that are in your brain, but you don't know where they are. You can't find it because it's not there. It's not attached to our awareness. So all these things have happened to us. So they're a part of what makes us make decisions. So like if you grew up in a family that was Muslim, at 10, you're Muslim. And you're like, why'd you decide to be a Muslim? You're like, I don't know. I guess because my dad and mom took me to Muslims,
Yeah,
the monastery, and it's like, so I just became a Muslim. Like you don't even know why. So one of the things that I find is that people make these decisions and have these actions, have these reactions that they don't even know why. So
mm,
one of the things that I talk about is you need self-awareness. The more self-awareness you have, the more things you understand about yourself, then the more likely you are to be able to tolerate the people around you. And then the flip of that is empathy, right? So empathy is knowing where you're coming from. So if I know why you do what you do, then I can be a lot more empathetic and understanding. And so when I know where I'm coming from and I know where you're coming from, and we have this idea of cooperating together, and we can communicate in an effective manner where we're hearing and understand each other, then the world works better. So one of
yeah.
my clients, she was having problems with her boss because her boss would yell at her. And she hated that because when she was young, her mom and her brother, who was her father figure, would yell at her constantly, which she hated. So every time her boss yelled at her, I could see her reverting back to a
Triggers,
5 year
yeah.
little girl, right? So we worked out these strategies to deal with the boss yelling at her. And I said, okay, tomorrow we're going to practice. So I'm going to pretend to be your boss and I'm going to yell at you and you're going to practice the things we talked about. And she called the next day and said, no, I don't want to do that. I forget that. I'm not going to do it. Well, 2 days later, her boss starts yelling at her. She starts yelling back at the boss and she ends up fired. And you're like, and she calls me, she's like, I didn't do anything you said. I go, probably not, right?
Yeah,
But what I learned was that when people are yelling at each other, nobody's listening. So it turned out he didn't really want to fire her. He just like, you need to get out of my face, blah, right? And she's like, well, if you want me to leave, then I'll just leave. And she goes, well, then fine, why don't you leave for the day? And she goes, fine, why don't I just leave altogether? And you're like, no, that's not where you wanted this to
yeah,
go, right? So when people are angry and fighting and yelling at each other, nobody's listening. And then people are saying these very hurtful things that you can apologize for, but you can't really take back because
yeah,
they've already, right?
yeah,
And so that's why when we were talking about earlier with anger, like when you understand what anger's for, like she didn't need to be angry. And clearly, when we pieced it together, it turned out there was some machine that they were going to send out 5,000 letters. And on the first letter, the machine got stuck. So they're like, right. So her job was to try and get the machine to work. And she's futzing and trying to get it to work. And the boss comes in seeing one, not even one done, and there's 5,000 do it. He's freaking out. So he goes, you know what? Forget it. You don't know what you're doing. I'll fix it. So then
yeah.
he couldn't fix it either, right? So
Right.
the reason he was yelling was because he was frustrated that he couldn't get these letters out. And then he was embarrassed because he couldn't fix it either. So now he's yelling because he didn't want to feel guilty or shame or whatever, or frustration. So now he's just yelling because that was his learned reaction. And so then she got yelled at. So then she just reverted back to being a 5 year old. So she's yelling back. And it's like the whole situation deteriorated when it could have easily been handled by going, boss, I know you're angry. I know you're frustrated. I know you got a new baby at home and you got a loan for this business that's killing you. And it's like, but we're going to get this machine to work. It's okay. And if we can't get this machine to work, you know what? We'll just buy another machine that'll work better, right? If
Yeah.
they had just done that, that relationship would have been much, much better, right?
Yeah, right. It's a very common thing. Like, everywhere I believe that in different scenarios, like people are not in sync with each other. They are not, and the reason might be, or I believe the reason is that we are not at peace with our own selves. We have some,
Yes.
something that we are out of touch, out of connection with our own self, and that's what we are trying to fix at the outer side, like at the external level.
Well, that's what I was talking about. You need to know yourself
Yeah,
because the more you learn about yourself,
yeah,
well, then the more secure you are in yourself. And
exactly.
I think
Right.
self-esteem plays a big role in this. So the better you feel about the self, the more you're able to handle stresses that come at you. So if you don't feel good about yourself and someone comes along and says, "You're a jerk, I don't like you." You're like, "Oh God, I don't like that." All
Mm.
right, but they're right. And you just kind of slink off. If you think of of yourself and someone comes along and says you're crappy, you're like, "Wait, what's the matter with you? What are you?" You're like, you didn't know me. You don't know what's going on here, right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, my board is like that. They're sending me letters like, "You're a really crappy doctor, and we're gonna fine you." And, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, "Wait, what? I just won this award that says my book is the best book in the country for psychology this year." Wait, that doesn't, they don't match up, right? What the heck is
Yeah.
the, what are you doing? What are you seeing that I'm not seeing, right? So yeah, no, that self-awareness becomes critical. And I think when people go see a psychologist or a psychiatrist, really what they're looking for is that self-awareness to understand themselves, where they're coming from, why they made these decisions, why they react. Like one of the things that my client was asking me, why do you think I react with anger so much? And the
Hmm.
answer is, well, when you were 5 and you got yelled at, and so and there's ways to change that. That's the cool part. So, like, I had a patient who had was having panic attacks, and she had gotten beat up by some guy, and for the next 20 years, she had panic attacks every time she even thought about that situation. So, I one of the skills that I had learned while I was in practice was hypnosis and this thing called neuro linguistic programming. And it's similar to EMDR, which some people are more familiar with. But literally in 2 hours, we were able to go from her having horrible panic attacks all the time, so she walked out with a smile on her face because we reframed that situation. She had gotten beat up, and she had her story was for the next 20 years, I was a victim, I was in pain, I was out of control, there was nothing I could do. But when we went back through the hypnosis, what we found was that she had actually, there was another person in the room. So she had actually passed out. And when she woke up, the person that had beaten her up was now beating this other person up. And she had the choice. She could get up and try to help that guy, or she could just lay there and pretend like she's dead. Well, she decided to get up and help the person. So she yelled, she distracted the guy who was beating him up, called the police. Everybody was okay. So I'm looking at her at the end going, well, so then you're a hero. And
Mm.
she's like, what? And I go, that's what heroes do. Like you were afraid, you were worried about your life, but you got risked your life, stood up, distracted that guy, and got you both out safe. That's what heroes do. And you could see when it sank in, she was like, oh, so that victimhood, that pain, that I was not in control, switched to, oh, I was a hero. What? And so
Right.
now she walked out of the office like 2 hours, like 20 years of panic attacks. 2 hours later, she's not having them anymore.
Nice. This is amazing. This is brilliant. And you said something really interesting a few minutes ago. It was like a couple minutes ago. It was like self-esteem, because I believe that the way we see ourselves, we see the world, right? This is how we see the world, through that lens.
That's our lens. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So you have created a unique point system for self-esteem. So what is that? How could someone start using that today, in 5 minutes or less?
Yeah. Okay. So, so I break self-esteem into three parts. There's
Mm-hmm.
self-worth, and that answers the question, am I a good person or not? Then there's self-respect, and that answers the question, am I doing things the right way? And then the third is called self-efficacy, or you could use confidence, and it'd be like, am I good and how skilled am I at learning something new? And when you put all those together, then that gives you self-esteem. So the problem with self-esteem is it gets started when you're an infant. And for the first 5 years of your life, all the people around you are telling you whether you're a good person or not. And so if your parents are yelling, you're a dumb little girl. You're bad. You did this. You cried too much. You did whatever, right? Like you're costing mommy and daddy money. We don't like you, right? Well, as a 5-year-old, that's the information the world is giving you, and you're
Yeah.
sucking that in, and your brain is a sponge. So by the time you're 5, your self-esteem is already well established. It can change some over time, but that initial impression is already set up. So if you start out with low self-esteem at 5 years old, then what happens, and I think you were saying this, is it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
Because with low self-esteem, the lens is, well, I'm a bad person. So when someone comes along and says, you're a bad person, you're like, ugh, I don't like that, but it fits. So if they come along and say you're a good person, you're like, wait, that doesn't fit. So then you do this thing where I call it 4Ds, where you start changing the information so that it fits, so that you don't have cognitive dissonance. So then you go, well, that person said I'm a good person, but they don't know who I really am. If they really knew who I was, they wouldn't think that. Or they must have some ulterior motive. They want some money from me, or they want something, or else they're just, they're blowing smoke up my butt, right? It's like, so then what happens is ultimately you don't see people saying you're a good person, and all you see is people telling you're a bad person. So guess what? You keep thinking you're a bad person
Yes.
because of the lens that you're looking through, and it becomes self-fulfilling. And so to change that, you have to understand. So breaking up in self-esteem into 3 parts. Now you go, okay, well, what's my self-worth? Then you go, okay, so what makes up our self-worth? And it turns out achievements are a big part of our self-worth. So psychologists keep telling us, well, don't use achievements as part of your self-esteem because they come and go. But that's wrong.
That's
They do. Like if something goes well, you feel good about yourself. When they go bad, so it happens. It's not that we have achievements affecting our self-worth. It's that we don't count our achievements accurately.
yeah.
So what I told one of my patients, I want you to count every achievement you have in the next day. And he called me out about an hour later. And I mean every achievement. That means like you went to the tap and you turned on and you had running water. What? You opened the refrigerator, there was food in there. Achievement, right? It's
Yeah.
like you were breathing, you woke up alive today. Yay, right? So when you start counting all your achievements as tens, then when something doesn't go right, well, okay, that's -10, but I got 100 points, so I'm still at plus 90. What I see where people they wake up in the morning and they go, ugh, I'm still here. I gotta get a crappy job. I'm at -10 to start the day. And like when I
Yeah.
wake up, there's 50 points. I'm alive, 10. I'm safe, 10. I got food, I got water, and I got indoor plumbing. What? 50 points just by waking up, right? So if
Wow.
something bad happens, now I'm at 40, but hey, 40 is still good. But for that person that's at -10, here's the second problem is that when they do achieve things, they give themselves a 0 or a 1. So I go, I got running. Most people go, they turn the tap on that doesn't even register. So
Hmm.
that's a 0 or something, something called and said, hey, you were nice. Oh, okay, that's a 1. But when something bad happens, my God, that's -10. Well, if you have every bad thing as a -10 and every good thing as a 0 or a 1, it's really hard to keep up. But if you go, hey, every bad thing is a -10, but everything that I'm doing that's achieving there's +10, there's no way, there's no one this person in this world that won't end up positive. And the same point system works for our identity. So when you look in the mirror, you see yourself and you're seeing, like for me, I'm seeing a father, I'm seeing a son, I'm seeing a husband, I'm seeing a doctor, I'm seeing a real estate agent, I'm seeing a guy with brown eyes, no hair, right? These are all the things that I see. And we make this list in our head of our characteristics that make up our identity. And we do the same thing with the points. The good points we give as a 1 or a 0. The bad points we put -10 and put them in neon lights. I'm fat. Like whatever. I don't have enough money, and we make blah. So again, you're at these tens and twenties, and over here are these zeros and ones, and you're like you can't keep up. But if you keep score accurately, it works. Now I had a patient that we did this, so she made this list. I said, "Tell me, so she put all like 10. She had like 15 things on the list, but she had 10 that were in the bad column and 4 that were in the good column." So we started looking at it like, well, why? What? You put here that you were a bad mother. And you're like, why is that? She goes, well, I drank too much. I was like, well, did you send your kids to school? Like, yeah. Did you feed them? Yeah. Did you clothe them? Did you have a house for them? Well, yeah. Well, then probably weren't such a bad mother. How about we move that over to like you were a good mother, right?
Hmm.
Maybe you drank too much, but you still did all the things you were supposed to do as a mother, right? So when we got done, She had 10 good things and 4 bad things. So I'm patting myself on the back on, I fixed this lady's self-esteem. Yay, good for me, right? Yay, good job, Sprouse.
Yeah.
Then I looked at the person and she was looked like somebody had just punched her in the stomach. And I'm like, wait, what? Did I miss something here? And here's what she said to me. She goes, well, because self-esteem is so integral to your person, she goes, if I'm wrong about that, then what else am I wrong about? Like, literally, it rocked her whole world. And
Mm.
what I realized then was like when you start affecting somebody's self-esteem and their core being, their like, core identity, and you start changing it, that is scary and uncomfortable. And it makes people go not want to do it because they're like, no, this I don't like where I'm at, but I'm used to it. Now you're changing, like, wait, so that client I was telling you about that yelled at her boss. We said, like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna practice. I'm not liking you right now, Dr. Sprouse. And I go, well, good, because that means you're uncomfortable. That means you're doing something you're not used to doing. But what you told me when we started this session was you wanted to be the new you. The first 50
Mm.
years of your life were pretty crappy, and you want a new you for the next 50 years. So that new you has to do things differently to get a different output.
Yeah, and a new you needs to have a different self-image also.
Yes, that's what we talked about. I go, the new person is you have a new identity. So that old identity, these are things that were attached to the old identity.
Yeah,
These are the things we're going to attach to the new identity.
yeah,
Yeah, and I said to her, I said this to her, I said, you should like change your hair color or something. She goes, I
yeah.
already did.
That's
Like, oh, good
interesting.
for you, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. It's very important that we start seeing ourselves in a different light, differently.
Yes.
Most of the times, people keep judging themselves because I was just watching an interview or just reading a book by I don't remember the name of the author. It was all about when we are kids, when our parents or teachers keep judging us, and we learn that behavior, and then we start judging ourselves, like we become our own parents and we become our own teachers.
Oh, we internalize for sure.
Yeah, we just
Yes.
generalize and we keep judging ourselves for different things, and we become overly critical about what we do, how we show up, how we do things, and all that stuff. And that affects a lot, like our self-esteem and self-image.
Yeah, well, that's what happens. Like,
Yeah,
so say you're, in third grade and you need to wear glasses, okay? And nobody else in the room is wearing
yeah,
glasses. People start picking on you for wearing glasses, and you're like, so then it depends on how you react, right? So if you start crying, then they go, oh, we know a way to make her cry. So
yeah,
we're just going to call it four eyes and whatever else, right? And it's like, but if you go, oh, yeah, I got glasses because I can see better than you now, well,
yeah,
then you're going to have a whole different reaction, right? So one of the things, and again, I don't know why I did this, but like I was that kind of guy. I would like somebody would try to make fun of me. Like they go, you're right, your handwriting sucks, Dr. Sprouse. And I could go, oh, I'm so embarrassed. And like, yeah, you're right. My handwriting sucks. And if I wanted to, I would spend some time and I kid with my first grade grandchild. And I was like, would you do me a favor? Would you do me handwriting lessons?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So it's like, some of it depends on how you react to it. And one of the things that I find, I read this in a book the other day where boys are used to teasing the crap out of each other, right? So they get a thicker skin. Girls not. And so girls are much more sensitive to that teasing,
yeah,
because
yeah,
go around, you're a jerk, and you're like, oh, you're a jerk, right? So that's just part of their interaction. Girls, it doesn't happen as much. So they're a little more vulnerable when it comes to people not being nice to them.
yeah, yeah.
And I say that in the general terms. Obviously, there's plenty of women that are fine and plenty of guys that aren't, but it's like in general, right?
Yeah, and they have their own different ways of bullying and, and stuff.
Yes, exactly. So one of the things that I found was that, and this is a problem when you were talking about relationships, in the difference between men and women. So women, when they're stressed out, tend to share. So they'll call the friend up and say, "Oh my God, this happened to me today." And so they're sharing around their stresses, right? Guys tend to minimize. And again, these are just generals, right? So I think that started from when we were like just organisms out there living on the savannah. So that women's job was in general to raise kids. And so when you're raising kids, you need to share because you need to have more than two hands, and you need to be looking ahead to see what's going on and figuring out, oh, there's a snake, keep away. There's a rock, he's going to put that in his mouth, whatever. Guys are out there trying to kill a lion or a woolly mammoth, right? So if you start worrying about all the things that could happen when you're trying to kill a woolly mammoth, you're not going to go. So they tend to minimize. So they go, I can get that woolly mammoth. No, I'll probably do it myself. But hey, why don't you come with me, right? So it's like, so their job is to minimize. And where they get into trouble is they get in a relationship with a woman, and the woman's like, "Oh, I'm really worried this is going to happen." And they go, "Honey, it's not going to happen. It's going to be fine. It's not that big a deal." And the woman goes, "Oh, that's so comforting. Thank you so much." But then something does happen, and then the guy goes, "Oh," the next time they go, "Well, this is really bad." And like, "Oh, it's not going to happen." Like, that's what you said last time, and it happened. And so, no, I'm not going to listen. And what's the matter with you? Why don't you have to worry? Why am I the one who has to do all the worry? And you're like, so then they end up, the things that were getting them together now are pulling them apart.
Yeah, right. Also, the people stress over the past and the future, and it's all about overthinking and stuff. So you have the way like the shoebox method,
Ah,
or to process the past. So what is it? What would you like to talk a bit about that?
sure. So, um, so humans are an interesting organism, right? So we have a tremendous past. So most animals have a little bit of past. Like they go, "Oh, there was an electric fence, and when I touched my nose to it, that was not good." That's about their past, right? That's it. Like we have this extensive past with
Yeah.
pictures and videos and books, and right? Then we have this future or this present that we live in right for the moment. But then we have this future, which again goes on forever. So I have patients coming and go, "Dr. Sprouse, the sun's going to die out in 4 billion years. So what's the point? 4 billion years? What do you?" It's like, right. What I want to do is have people be able to live in all three tenses of their life and be happy in all three tenses. But you have to understand where the problems are coming in. So in the past, the reason we feel uncomfortable at the past is because there's things that we've done that we feel guilty about, or there's things that we've done that we regret.
Yeah.
And they make us feel bad because they're designed to make us feel bad. The reason we have guilt and regret is for us to feel bad, to make us change. So one of the things I say to people is like, look, if you did something wrong in the past, so I see patients that have addictions, right? And they go, "Well, I drank a lot," and like this lady, and she goes, "And I wasn't a good mother." And you're like, okay, the idea of guilt is you did something wrong. Okay, so you drank too much. Okay, that was wrong. Okay, so now you're not drinking, you're sober. And
Yeah.
she's like, "Well, yeah, but it's only been 6 months." It's like, it's okay. Guilt did what it was supposed to do, which was it changed your behavior to fit more with where society wants us.
Hmm.
So you did something that society thought was wrong, and it said you should feel shame and you should feel bad about that. And the goal of that is to change you so that you do something that fits more with society. So now you're sober, drinking Diet Coke instead of beer. Good. So then guilt did what it was supposed to do. So, okay, so stop feeling guilty. It did what it was supposed to do. Regret is I made a bad choice. And so now you go back and go, "Oh, I can't believe I made that choice. I really regret that." You feel bad. But basically, you have to go back and say, well, when I made the choice, what was the information that I had? Because generally, we're making choices about the future. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know exactly what's going to happen. So
Hmm.
I used in my office, we had bought a computer, but the office manager is the only one that knew how to use it. And I'm like, this makes me nervous because what happens if you leave? And she's like, "No, I'm not leaving." And then, of course, before the computer even came, she left. And it's like, what? Yeah. So now I could regret that decision. But when I went back, I like, look, I told her she was the only one, and she assured me she was going to stay. So with that information, I bought the computer. With her leaving, okay, now it looks like a bad decision that I regret, but I have to go back to the information I had, and at the time, it was a good decision. So regret's not a good idea.
Yeah.
The future, we worry about it. And so one of the things that I talk about in my book, The Highway to Your Happy Place, A Roadmap to Less Stress, is that things like worry and guilt and regret are side effects to our skills.
Hmm.
So we have the ability to look into the past. We have the ability to look into the future. The side effect of envisioning the future is that you have to worry about it. And you're like, wait, what? So my 1-year-old grandson doesn't have that skill. So he can't envision the future.
Yeah.
So he doesn't sit at the breakfast table going, "Dad, when I go to college, how are we going to pay for it?" Like it doesn't come up. He just eats his banana, right? Because he can't look into the future, he doesn't worry. But he's also not very successful. So what I try to write about in the book is, well, how do I keep the skill of envisioning the future and lose the side effect of worrying about it? And so there's a couple of tools. So two of the tools are what I call realistic optimism and a worry organizer. But what I see then is people have all these things. They're guilty, they're regretting, they're worried, they got all these stresses and they all pile up and then they get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And what's well overwhelmed is I got this amount of stress and this amount of coping skills, not a good situation. So now any little stress is horrendous because you're already past the point where you can handle it, right?
Mm.
So shoe boxes are one of the ways to not feel overwhelmed. So the reason people get overwhelmed is they do what I call lumping. So lumping is I got this stress and this stress and this stress. Oh yeah, I forgot that stress. And they just make this big pile of stress. And they're looking at it going, I don't even know where to start. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. This is crazy. They hate it, but they don't know where to do. So they're just sitting there uncomfortable and miserable. And this is one of the things that I would tell your audience. Do not resign yourselves to being overwhelmed and being stressed out because there's a way to get out of this. It doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
So one of my answers is shoe boxes. So the technical term is compartmentalization. So lumping is putting them all together. Compartmentalization is keeping them separate. So if you walked into your bedroom and there was 100 shoe boxes there, and the bottom was here, and the top was there, and the left was here, and the right, and there's hundreds, and they're all over the room, you'd open the door and start freaking out. Oh my God, what am I supposed to do, right? But if you walk into that same room, same amount of shoe boxes, but the bottom's there, the two shoes are in, the lid's on top, they're all stacked nicely on. That's a lot of shoes. I'll give you that, right? But that's not overwhelming. And so then you just take one shoebox down, you look at it, you put it back, you take the next one down. So the more compartmentalized, the more shoebox, the more separate you can keep these problems, then they don't all meld together and become overwhelming. So
Mm.
when people start lumping, I go, shoebox. And they go, yeah, 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 all right, you're right, Dr. Sprouse, right? Because keeping them separate, better. Now, some problems are interrelated. I'll give them that. But the more separate you can keep, then the less overwhelmed you're going to be.
Mm. Yeah, that's interesting. And also there's something you talk about real optimism, realistic
Yeah.
optimism. That
Hmm.
term. So what
Yeah.
is that? And how can somebody whose life is falling apart, how can somebody use it in the best way, this tool?
Right. So somebody that's falling apart, usually they're overwhelmed. And so they're doing, I want the first thing I would talk about is shoeboxes. Let's keep these problems separate, right? But one of the things that's making people feel overwhelmed is they worry a lot. So
Yeah.
they're envisioning the future. And so here's my definition of worry is you're envisioning the future. Yay, great skill. Two is you're focused on all the bad things that can
Yeah.
happen. And then three is you're having the fear reaction right now. So there's no lion, there's no tiger, there's no bear, but you're having a fear reaction as if it's happening right now. And that's where we get into trouble because there's nothing to make that stop. So I was just talking to somebody, there's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers, right? So a zebra will hear a lion and run away. But once he can't hear or smell, or see the lion, he goes back to eating grass. But if I hear a lion, I run away, but then I'm standing over here safe going, oh, what would happen if I'd hurt my leg? What happened if I was my grandson? Oh, yeah. So I can just thinking of lying now, sets off a fear reaction and there's nothing to make it stop because I just have to think about it and it shows up, right? So realistic optimism is using our ability to choose for our good. So if I can go, hey, I'm going to focus on all the bad things. Wait, what if I focus on all the good things that could happen? Well, and if I focus on a good thing happening, then I go, oh, well, that makes me feel good. I like that, right? So I
Mm.
use my book as an example. Like I could have sat around going, ugh, never going to get this book done. Even if it gets done, it's never going to get published. Even if it gets published, nobody's going to buy it. Even if they buy it, it's not going to help them. Ugh. Right. That makes me feel crappy now, which then guess what? I don't write the book. But I sit around going, oh man, when this book gets done, people are going to be in a happy place. The world's going to be a better place. That makes me feel so awesome. Let's get this book done right now, right?
Yeah.
So, realistic optimism, I'm going to be optimistic. I'm going to focus on the good things. The realism part is, though, I can't ignore that there's bad things that could happen. And
Yeah.
that's where the second tool comes in. So, what I want to do now is go, I'm going to envision the future. I can see there's some bad things that could happen, but I'm going to plan without fear.
Yeah.
And that's where so this other thing called a worry organizer is I'm going to write down what I'm worried about because worry is inefficient. People go, oh, I'm worried, I'm worried, I'm worried, I'm worried. They wake up at 2 in the morning, like, oh yeah, I'm worried, I'm worried. Oh, I forgot I was worried, right? And it just goes over and over and over again. It's not very efficient. So I say to people, I want you to worry, but worry efficiently. So write it down so you only have to do it once. And it's what are you worried about? Why are you worried about it? How likely is it that it's going to happen? And how dangerous if it does happen?
Yeah.
What can I do to make it not happen? And then the last category, this is the planning one, where he's like, well, if it happens, what do I do?
Hmm.
So if I'm
Yeah.
sitting in my house and I hear that there's a flood coming, right? That there's, torrential rainstorms and my house is going to flood. And I'm like, oh, Like I'm worried that my house is going to damage. Why are you worried? Well, because I saw the sign, I saw these movies about floods and they're crazy damage to your house. Well, how likely is that? Well, the weather service says 20% likely, but if it happens, it's going to be bad, right? So
Yeah.
what can I do? Oh, well, I can put, I can put a levee around my house. I can put sandbags around. I can put a sump pump in. I can, right? And then you go, what happens if it does flood? And you're like, oh man, if it's already flooded, well, I can make sure my insurance is paid up. I can make sure that I've taken all the power equipment out of the basement and put it upstairs, right? So I can do all these things and I can plan for it so that so that when I think about this, I don't have to have a fear reaction because I go, already got that under control, right?
Yeah, it's like have a plan and get a life.
But write it down
Yeah.
because when you write it down, then you don't have to keep thinking about it over your head. So
Yeah.
somebody was asking me this question, like it's a loose leaf notebook. So each worry is a page, and you can just flip the page, like, oh yeah, worry number 27, right? And the nice thing when you write it down is you can show it to people, and go, hey, can you think of anything else? Like I thought all these things that I could do, but maybe like so I had a patient that was worried about getting breast cancer. And
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Yeah. And when
in
you
her head,
write
she
it
had a hundred
down,
percent
sorry.
chance.
Yeah.
She had a 100% chance of getting breast cancer. So when
Yeah.
she came to me and I go, no, that's not right. It's only a 15% chance. She was
Yeah.
like, wait, that's all? And it was weird. Her body language changed because she's like, she got her life back.
Yeah. And when you write it down, it like you just get it out of your head and put it on the paper. So it gets
Yes,
released from your
absolutely.
system. Yeah.
It's weird. We can think, right? It's an amazing skill. But when I'm thinking, half of my brain has to be holding the information that I'm thinking about, and the other half has to think, right? But when it's written on a piece of paper, I don't have to remember what I have to think
Yeah.
about. It's all down there. So now 100% of my brain can do problem solving.
Yes, absolutely. Gary, would you like to talk a bit about your book before we wrap up? And
Yeah. So,
yeah.
the book's a great book, right? It's Highway to Your Happy Place, Roadmap to Less Stress. I'll just let your audience know because I was kind of honored by this, but the National Indie Excellence Awards just gave me a first place medal for well-being,
Wow,
and the independent book publishers just gave me a gold medal for psychology for this
that's
book. So
amazing.
it's like, yeah, it's been well received. I don't know if you know who Jack Canfield is, but he wrote Chicken
Yes.
Soup for the Soul. He sold 500 million books in his life. He read my book and said, "This is a great book. It's a must
Wow.
read." I learned things from this book, and this is a guy that makes his living doing this stuff,
Yeah.
right? So there's a lot of good stuff that's going along with this book. It's written so it can help people, right? I wrote it with very concrete ideas. It's like, this is the definition of this. This is the tool. I'm used to, as a primary care doctor, going, hey, your blood pressure is high, take this medicine. Here's a picture of what I'm going to share. Like I try to make this as easy for people to read. One of the things I say to people when people are stressed out, the one thing they don't have is time. So what I say to people is like, you know what? This book is written. So if you don't feel bored, don't read that chapter. If you don't worry, don't read that chapter. If you feel guilt, read that chapter. So
Yeah.
I say to people, you could just read one chapter in this book and your life will be better.
Great.
But the fascinating thing about the book is I wrote the second half of the book first. So when I first started this project, I was writing all about stress and how to have less of them. And when
Hmm.
I'd say to people like, hey, where would you be if you had with less stress? They're like, I don't know, I never really thought about that. And I was like, oh, we need a place to go. We need a destination. So then started writing the first half of the book, which is like, hey, here's your happy place. So when you understand what your happy place is, you're like, oh, I want to be there. But then these stresses are keeping me from there. So then, okay, here's where I'm trying to get to, and here's how I can get rid of the stresses. So now I can spend all my time in my happy place. Yay, right?
What is your favorite chapter from the book?
I like the happy place chapter, right? Because it's like, and after I wrote the book, I read it came out in an audiobook just like last week. Yeah.
Hmm.
So they can get it on Amazon. So on Amazon, it's an ebook, it's an audiobook now, it's a paperback, it's a hardback, whatever you want, right? So when I look back at what I had written 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh, that was good, but I've added to the place. So now the happy place is a little bit bigger, right? And it's like when you start seeing what the rooms are in the happy place, it's like gratitude, fulfillment, safety, hope, feeling connected, right? Being accepted, being appreciated. You're like, wow, those are good things, right? Yeah, I want that, right? And you realize they're attainable. That's the nice thing, that you can be in your happy place. And it's these stupid stresses, these side effects to your skills that are getting in the way. So let's get rid of the side effects, keep the skills, and we'll all live in a happy place. But if we all work together, we can all be in a happy place. And then that's what I call the unisphere. So my goal is to get everybody in the unisphere.
Beautiful. That's interesting. Gary, if somebody is watching us right now or listening to us right now at 2 a.m. in bed and their mind is racing, they are not able to
Mm.
sleep, what is that one activity or exercise or question they can try right now to feel better?
Yeah, so get up, get a piece of paper, get a pencil. Instead of laying in bed, not sleeping and freaking out and having a fair reaction and having panic attacks, write down that worry organizer. You can download it. It's on my website. My website is thelesstressdoc.com. And on that website is a worry organizer. So download it, fill it out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Do the best you can because once it's down on a piece of paper, then you can go back to sleep and go, okay, I did everything I could now. And then when you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, I forgot I should have added this. You show it to your spouse. Hey, could you add something to this? Right? That's the thing that'll get you away from spending all your life worrying, feeling fear.
That's interesting. Thank you for your time. It was a very thoughtful conversation on stress.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on. This has been great. I love doing this. And again, I say to your audience, do not resign yourself to being stressed out. Change can be uncomfortable, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
And there's way better ways to live your life and with a lot less stress.